Okay, we will start with Dr. Virginia Onyara, who is a consultant representing Africa Telecommunication Union, talking about transboundary movements. So, Dr. Virginia, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Simone. Thank you very much for the entire team that has been working so hard to bring this conference together. My name is Dr. Virginia Onyara. I will be representing the African Telecommunication Union as the e-waste consultant. I'll be talking about how to be able to help us understand the transboundary movement of electrical and electronic waste. Probably I'll start with the introduction of how we started having this transboundary movement. It started way back in the 70s and 80s when there was a worldwide concern about the transboundary movement and disposal of hazardous waste. Reason being, there had emerged transboundary shipment of hazardous waste from industrialized nations for cheap disposal in inadequately prepared sites in developing countries. There's research to show that. There's reason to that has led to such information being shared by people, because people were bringing disposing hazardous waste in Africa, mostly Africa and other developing nations. This ignited a new urgency to develop and implement international controls, culminating in the Global Convention to Control the Transboundary Movement of Hazardous Waste and their Disposal, commonly what we call the Basel Convention. Apart from the Basel Convention, African countries were convinced that their peculiar circumstances were never taken into account nor protected by the Basel Convention, and through the OAU, they adopted the Bamako Convention. And what is transboundary movement, someone may ask? Transboundary movement of hazardous waste. It is any movement of hazardous waste from an area under the national jurisdiction of one state to or through an area under the national jurisdiction of another state, provided at least two states are involved in the movement. For example, if we have waste coming from Kenya being taken to Egypt, for example, those are two states. And the movement of that hazardous waste the handling and the transportation will move from different countries. Okay, maybe you're coming from Kenya, there's Eritrea, there's Djibouti, there's Somalia. So all the entire movement has to be taken care of through the transboundary movement of hazardous waste protocols. And hazardous waste is basically what is waste that poses substantial or potential threats to public health or the environment. In many developed and developing countries, the treatment, the storage, and disposal of hazardous waste is regulated by specific policies. We have different policies, we have regulations, we have standards in our different countries, and it helps in the prevention and mitigating of the adverse effects of the effects of those e-waste to the environment and to the human health. Those are country-specific regulations or policies or instruments that each country uses. But for movement, we have commonly conventions that we use commonly the Basel Convention, and here in Africa, we have the Bamako Convention. The Basel Convention on the Control of Transboundary Movements of Hazardous Waste and their Disposal was adopted in 1989. Probably we should go back to history and find out why we began using the Basel Convention in 1989, but it came into force in 1992. It is the most comprehensive global environmental agreement on hazardous waste and other wastes. The convention aims to protect human health and the environment against the adverse effects resulting from the generation, transboundary movements, and the management of hazardous wastes. Okay, there's generation. It helps us, with the generation, transboundary movements, and management of that particular hazardous waste. It regulates the transboundary movement of hazardous waste and ensures that wastes are managed and disposed of in an environmentally sound manner. That is the ultimate, that at the end of the day, we are managing this waste in an environmentally friendly way so that it doesn't have an effect on our health or our environment. It covers toxic waste, poisonous waste, explosive waste, corrosive waste, flammables, and infectious waste. What about the Bamako? The Bamako Convention is a treaty of African nations providing the import into Africa as well as the dumping or incineration into the oceans and inland waters of hazardous waste, including the radioactive waste. It was adopted in 1991, came into force in 1998, with the aim of protecting human and environmental health. That is the ultimate, protecting people, protecting the environment. It came as a response to Article 11 of the Basel Convention, which encouraged parties to enter into bilateral, multilateral, regional agreements on hazardous waste to help achieve the objectives of the convention. It prohibits the spread of hazardous waste to less developed countries. And maybe we should ask ourselves why the Bamako and why the LDCs or the less developed countries? Because at that time there was a realization that many developed nations were exporting toxic waste to Africa. I don't know if we have seen this even in current trends, that people are still importing, people are still bringing in, whether toxic or not, whether for their own businesses or not, but we can categorically say that this thing has not stopped. And some countries have continually targeted Africa and other least developed countries as the destination for hazardous waste, under the pretext of we are going to reuse, we are going to recycle, and sometimes this equipment are only coming here for 2 years and then they will die. So as we continue with this conference, I hope we will be able to come up with more solutions of how best we are going to handle these unscrupulous dealers of these disposers. And from that understanding, I want to ask us a question, even as we progress for these two more days that are coming, the 3 days that we have. I want us to think about this thing. Is e-waste only hazardous? Okay, I know most of us, we use the NCAR in managing electronic waste. We have, our countries have categorized e-waste as hazardous, but with the understanding and the knowledge that you have, a poll has been done and most of us have been in e-waste for quite some time. Maybe the question that we should ask ourselves, is it just hazardous? Should we treat it as hazardous all through? Okay. And some people who have been there before us have thought about it, and in 2019, the Basel Convention acknowledged that there are many challenges in WE. Okay, and one of the implementation challenges that was noticed was the difficulty in distinguishing between waste and non-waste in WE. What is waste and what is not waste in electronic waste or in EEE? What do we consider waste and what don't we consider waste in EEE? So to address this issue in particular, the Conference of the Parties, or COP, adopted an improved version of the technical guidelines on transboundary movements of electrical and electronic waste, which also includes the used electrical and electronic waste. Okay, we in electronic waste, we talk about the circularity, we talk about the circular economy. We want these gadgets, we want this equipment to stay longer in the market, to stay longer in the usage, to reuse, reduce, to all those things that we use in the circularity. So they included the used electrical and electronic equipment because we use it again and again. Okay, we have, and most of you can agree with me that we have an issue with even the definition of electronic waste. What is electronic waste to you may not be electronic waste to somebody else. So these challenges brought about the issue of now having this technical guideline that will be able to help people to identify, is this waste for final disposal? Is this waste or something that I can use to get something else out of it, to reuse, to refurbish, all those things, to recycle and, use it for something else. There's a document, this technical guideline, that lists the criteria for defining, and I would urge you to look at it, okay, and see if it's a 2019 document. So, 2019, then 2020, there was Corona outbreak, the pandemic, and then not much happened then. So I would suggest that you look at the document and see how best you can use it for those who are recyclers, those who move equipment from one country to another. Probably you may want to look at the document to see whether it can help you. It lists criteria for defining waste, what is waste and what is non-waste under the Basel Convention, and suggests the type of documentation that should be required by authorities to prevent illegal traffic. Now that we know what we know, I asked you a question about, is it only hazardous? We know that electronic waste is not only hazardous. It has hazardous components. It has those things that are bad to our health if handled improperly. But we also know it has valuable materials that can be recovered for recycling. And those materials include iron, aluminium, copper, gold, all those good things, and the rare earth metals that are included in the equipment. Thereby, they contribute to a sustainable resource management if we handle them properly. When we extract these metals from the earth, we deplete, Mother Nature is, squeezed to the end. Is it possible for us to do urban mining? Because I read somewhere that research has shown that whatever we have now, whatever gold we have now, whatever rare earth metals we have now is enough to serve us for a long time. Is it necessary for us to stop going to the fields, to the Mother Nature for mining and use whatever we have, what scholars call urban mining? Is it possible for us to do urban mining? The recovery and use of such materials as raw materials after they have become waste can increase the efficiency of their use and also lead to the conservation of energy and a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions when we use technologies that are adequate and the methods that we use also are adequate in recovery of those materials. We know that reuse of equipment, at least from the 80s, 90s, 2000, 2010, 20, and up to now in 2020s, we know that reuse of this equipment, or the reuse of the equipment after we have repaired them, we have refurbished them, can contribute even more to the sustainable development. Some of us are using refurbished equipment that were considered waste elsewhere, but we are using them comfortably now, okay? It leads to a more sustainable development. By extending the life of this EEE, we reduce the environmental footprint of the resource-intensive processes involved in producing the equipment. When we reuse also, we facilitate the availability of equipment to groups in societies that otherwise will not have access to it. Okay? There are people who will not have access to an iPhone, for example. But because of the reusing, because people are able to, bring it down to give it or as donations or as recycled products or whatever, other people are able to afford them, okay? There are facilities in Africa that are able to refurbish, recycle. We know, even the WE Center and other facilities around, they're able to refurbish, they're able to recycle this equipment for reuse. Since these facilities are not present in all countries, used equipment destined for repair or refurbishment may need to be moved across borders prior to reuse. Back to our transboundary movement. What way for us as Africans? If, for example, I want to move something that I have recycled, or I want to recycle it in Kenya and I am in the Gambia, for example, or I'm in Mali, for example, and I want to bring it to Rwanda or to South Africa or to Kenya for refurbishment or for recycling, is my region, is Africa helping me in any way to move this thing? Because we have categorically shown that it is not only hazardous. Okay, there are those components that are good, there are those things that are good, things that we can be able to recover before we take it to the final disposal. Is Africa able to help me move this thing from Mali or the Gambia to Nairobi in Kenya or South Africa in Johannesburg for me to be able to recycle or refurbish and use it in my country or in another country that I purpose to take it to? So that moves me to the question that I want all of us to ponder through. Which way for Africa? Which way for us? Are we going to have, regional groupings like MENA, that is in North Africa, ECOWAS, South Africa, East Africa, Central Africa, coming together into groups and, having this multilateral or bilateral talks and see how best they can be able to handle the issue of e-waste? Just the same way like the Basel Convention saw the need, to handle e-waste in this manner. Is it possible for us to sit down together and discuss about it and see how best that we can help the recyclers, we can help the stakeholders who are handling electronic waste to be able to move this waste from one place to another where there's a facility that can be used to repair, to recycle, to, do all those circularity methods of keeping this equipment longer in usage, so that they can be able to help in the sustainably managing the environment and keeping ourselves safe and healthy. Okay, maybe we can be thinking about that as we progress in the entire time when we're having this conference. I'll be happy to share. I'll be happy to share the insight and the knowledge that I have, so that we can work together as a team. By the end of the third day, we can be able to come up with something and say, yes, this is the way for us in Africa. We have our own dynamics, we have our own issues, we are the recipients of this, and we have to come up with something that will guide us as Africans in the management of electronic waste and the handling, the logistics, the movement of electronic waste. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening. I'll be here for questions and answer. I really appreciate the time you have taken, the WE Center, to invite me to speak about it, and I'll be here. Thank you very much, Simone.
Asante sana. Thank you, Dr. Virginia, for this very inspiring and also insightful opening remark speech. And like you said, people have opportunity, our audience can connect with you. And I will repeat, since I know now we are many more than when we started. So in your right-hand panel, there is a Q&A session where you can write your questions. And if you see someone who has written the question you would like to ask, you can just like that one where the heart is, and we will prioritize those that have gotten many hearts, many likes. And then you will also see in the handouts our program for these 3 days, along with now Dr. Virginia's base of her presentation about the Transboundary movement. To the left, you have something called the lobby, where you can see all participants. You can send messages, you can chat with the people, and you can invite to say, let's go to the lounge and grab a seat, and you can have a one-on-one online talk. You can also see all the speakers there. And in the booths, you can meet with us from the WE Center, and you can meet with our sponsors, Close the Gap. And have a look there but now we really want to also listen to everyone who is speaking. I know that. I'm just looking now. 2 seconds.